That's a lot to live up to all of a sudden. I wish my wife was here to hear about all that. So, but look, thank you for having me here today. Thank you to all of the distinguished guests for being here. Although, admittedly, seeing all the cadets out there, to the families and parents of all those great young men and women, probably are the most distinguished of our distinguished guests. So thank you all for being here. When I do look out and I see a core of cadets of that magnitude, coming from a community like this, it's so amazing to see. The whole community really should be immensely proud, just as you all should be proud of yourselves. But I mean, gosh, what a supportive way, to raise our next generation of soldiers. And I love it when we can have these kind of events where we take multiple generations of service and we pile them together, and we remember our heritage, because America's history is really a military history. I thought I'd start by just sharing a little bit about what Veterans Day means to me. I'm like so many people probably in the audience. I'm a first-generation American. My father didn't graduate college, but served in the Air Force as a firefighter. So I'm the first in my family ever to be an officer. I have uncles that have served, as well as a cousin that actually was a Navy corpsman with the Marines while we were both in Iraq together in 08-09. So, and the Marine Corps was kind enough to give me a ride out there to see him along the Syrian border. So it was kind of nice. I would be remiss if I did not wish our Marine Corps brothers and sisters a very happy birthday. Marine Corps birthday was yesterday. And it pains me to admit it, that y'all have the best song. For 364 days each year, I love my Navy and Marine Corps brethren, and for 364 days a year, I love my Air Force brethren. Coast Guard, we don't play you in football. Air Force, I like you a lot better now because we beat you last week, and so we do have Navy in a couple of weeks. So I beat Navy. I have to start with that one. A very friendly rivalry, but that stops being a rivalry the minute we leave the field. Something that's really cool if you ever get to watch the game. The goal of every Army-Navy game, the goal of every Army-Air Force game, and certainly the goal of the Navy-Air Force game, I don't watch that one, but the goal is always to sing second. The first thing that we do when the game is over is the losing team forms up in front of their Corps of Cadets to sing the alma mater. The winning team forms up behind them, and then we go and reverse the order, and so the winning team gets to sing second. And it's one of the great traditions in football, and I hope you'll be conscious of that sometimes when you see it, because for the last 20-something years, those kids have left that field and gone on to what MacArthur called on other fields, on other days, that will bear the fruits of victory. So it's a big moment. 9/11 kind of changed Veterans Day for me. I've never actually thought of myself as a veteran. I still think of myself as a soldier. And I always thought of being a veteran as kind of that transition from being a soldier to being a veteran. And I know it's incorrect, but I think at the end of the day, it's always sort of a personal reflection anytime you have these kind of celebrations, these kind of memorials, and these kind of gatherings. But 9/11 changed things for me in my perspective of this day, right, that began in 1918 at the culmination of World War I. They signed the armistice, right, and it was the 11th hour, the 11th day, the 11th month to end the war, to end all wars. And then, of course, 40 years later or so, we were doing the same thing in World War II. But I left active duty in 1992. So I was part of that Desert Storm, Desert Shield generation, and I know how much that defines all of my classmates from West Point. There's not a lot of us left in the Army. But I left. I became a civilian. I was out for 10 years. 9/11 changed it for me because I felt like I needed to do something. So I joined up with the Army Reserve, and I've been serving ever since. Certainly never thought that it would ever lead me to be a general officer. Okay, he's okay, so that's good. But on that day, there was a photograph that was just, it's been indelibly marked in my mind. I grew up in New Jersey in the shadow of the World Trade Center. I watched it being built. We took a school trip there as soon as it opened. When I started my career in 1998 at Goldman Sachs, we had our first 2 weeks of training on Windows on the World, which was the restaurant atop the first tower. So when they went down, I remember this photograph of a firefighter running up the stairs, kind of had his head cocked, young guy, dark hair, and I just thought, I got to do something. So I waited a year, and exactly a year later, I joined into the Army Reserves, and I've been there ever since. So on that day, sort of this whole holiday for me started to include our firemen, our police officers. We're so honored to have a number of our first responders here today. And then I just, you start thinking a year ago, in the midst of COVID, I had a pretty serious heart event after one of my morning runs. And unconscious and without a heartbeat, I was brought into the emergency room, and you're reminded of those EMTs and all those healthcare workers, right? COVID has really expanded what service means, right? And risk in places that we don't associate risk. And there's so many people out there that serve our country and serve our community that we should remember to thank them every day. And I think when I think of service, it makes me start to reflect sort of even more, especially as a parent. And if the greatest way to serve your country, to serve your community, to serve the planet in general, right, is to be a good parent, right? Because your impact is exponential, right? So service comes in so many forms and fashions, and I'm so honored, that we would take days, out of our year, to celebrate sort of specific groups. But I think for me, service and thank yous and Veterans Day, it just expands every year. Memorial Day, as we celebrate those that gave their life doing this, and certainly we've seen that even with COVID. So it's a reminder that there's so many different ways, to serve. I talked about, my classmates from the academy and how, we kind of associate ourselves as the Desert Storm generation. And, I think I'll kind of jump through to about 4 or 5 of the questions that I get asked most often whenever I'm speaking in groups, or even when I'm just with other parents and friends back home. But I'll kind of start with one where, World War I, World War II, right? The returning soldiers were heroes. And there was this love affair with America. And then we kind of got to my dad's generation in Korea, where it was kind of the forgotten war, right? And there wasn't a great celebration of the returning veterans. And then we got to Vietnam, and we probably hit a low point between the relationship between, our military services and our communities. And but Desert Storm kind of changed all that, right? There was Schwarzkopf became this big star. There was a ticker tape parade in New York City, and that love affair was rekindled. And I hope over the years that our Vietnam veterans have been able to feel some of that and to live some of that, because it's incredibly important. And so the first question I always get asked is, what do you all think when we say, thank you for your service? And I learned from a young soldier years ago, and it's a story that Secretary, I still like to call him General Mattis, or Mad Dog, but Secretary Mattis said, he heard a young corporal in the Marine Corps responding to someone that said, thank you for your service, and that young corporal responded, you're worth it. Yeah, I'm going to use that. Because you are. Just look around. I mean, my goodness, right here. Yeah, it just tells you why everyone does it. But so I get asked, does it matter? Do you care? And I would say absolutely, right? I mean, for the young people that are out there that are going to become soldiers, sailors, airmen, it's what we would call a combat multiplier, because when our young kids can feel proud of what they're doing, they're better at it. So yeah, it really does matter, and yeah, you really are worth it. The second question I always get asked is, what's the difference between a ranger and a SEAL? I love answering that one. And actually, there's a great YouTube video that you can watch of Admiral McRaven, kind of the head SEAL, the guy that got bin Laden. He gave a graduation speech at the University of Texas, and he ended up writing a book along those lines as well. And he talked about the importance of the training at the Annapolis, at the Naval Academy, where or new sailors as they enter the Navy, right? They learn to make their bed, and it's incredibly important to get up each morning, make your bed, right? And there's so many of those stereotypes about bouncing the quarter off of it and all that kind of stuff. But the idea there is you're accomplishing something. And even if it's something small, right, all of the small things lead to bigger things, and you're just going to get more done, you're going to be better, you're going to build some routine into your life of things that are positive. And it's an incredible speech, and I would encourage every one of you to watch the YouTube video. It's very, very inspirational. And I agree, starting your day with something that's really important. I'm an Army Ranger. I get up each morning, I run 5 miles. So what's the difference between a Ranger and a SEAL? A SEAL gets up and makes their bed, a Ranger gets out and runs 5 miles. So the other thing I get asked a lot about is the Afghanistan withdrawal. What does the military think about that debacle that we saw on TV and all of that kind of stuff? And General Milley actually gave a wonderful answer when he was testifying to Congress, and I always think it's a great reminder of what civil-military relations really are. We are under civilian control of the military, and it's one of the great hallmarks of America and American stability and politics, and kind of too often we need to remind very important people about sort of civics 101. We have 2 bosses when you're in the military. Congress, right? They can declare war. Congress controls the budget. And the president, who's actually in the military chain of command only as the commander-in-chief. So General Milley reminded everyone there that our job is to provide our best advice to Congress and to the president. And we elect people, right? This is not really a democracy, right? We're a republic. We elect people to make the decisions for us. We elect people that we trust to do that. And so on the military side, we give our best advice. Someone makes the decision. If we're asked to be that element of national power that is part of the enforcement of that decision, we do it to the very best of our ability. Everything in between is really nobody's business, right? It's not our job to tell anyone, we told the president to do this and he blew us off. We're not going to do that. It's never going to happen. And we're not going to know what military advice was ever given. And it's always important to remember that our job is to advise and then to do our best job possible when we're given our marching orders. And that's what soldiers do. Another thing I get asked about are the contentious elections. And I don't know, historically, I would say that, in the 1960s during the Vietnam War, when we had protests at the universities and we had cities burning and we had race riots and things like that, we also had the Hong Kong flu pandemic going on. So I don't know, Mark Twain once said that history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it often rhymes. You want to talk about a contentious election, I'd probably go back to 1860. That led to a civil war where 600,000 Americans died. There were 25 million of us to start, so that's a pretty large percentage. That's a contentious election. We're a democracy, right? Somebody wins, somebody loses. It's kind of it, right? Nobody's right or wrong. I don't know. When 50% of the country disagrees with you, it's hard to say that they're all wrong, whichever side you come from. So, but I think it's probably the last thing I'll say is that, over time, the military has been sort of more and more separated from American society, right? There's not the economic struggles that have accompanied, previous wars. We don't need victory gardens. So a lot of times it's very easy to deploy the military around the world because there aren't a lot of real sacrifices at home. And there's that small 1% that does, or will wear this uniform. So when I see a Corps of Cadets out there like that, and I look out at the future generation, I see them getting a chance to meet our past generations of military personnel. It makes me incredibly happy. And I'll leave you with the thought that I began the day with. Right? Service comes in so many forms. And when I look out here, I just see how many people we do have serving our nation, serving our community. And so from me to all of you, thank you for your service, thanks for your time, and thanks for listening.